2, 1. Bam. There it is, man.
Hey,
Done.
it's another Monday.
Monday.
We got a lot to talk about today.
I know it's salts, man. Holy cow! I mean, salt is a very decisive issue.
It's the way that's what I said earlier. It's like defending your favorite football team. Like if you're Denver Broncos and I'm Raiders, we're gonna fight about it.
Go Instant Ocean.
Go Red Sea Corporal. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know, man. Like, I want to see if we like throw them at each other. Who wins the line? You know, I don't know. All right, well, welcome to another live Ask BRStv. We start these things out by giving away stuff away for free. So become a preferred reefer. There's a link in the footer on bulk resupply if you want. Add stuff to your cart or buy it. Either way, it can be free. Yeah, every week. All right, we'll start with the first one here, and it is Carmen Romano of New Haven, Connecticut. I mean, sometimes you get to wish you just bought more stuff.
There was a reason. So there was a story with this one. After you tell him how much he wins, go ahead.
Oh, he got two 10-inch 1 micron premium RO-Save.Z sediment filters from GE Water Technologies for a total of $18.05.
$18. So this was one I was thinking about. You know, we were talking about people's wish lists and everything. Mm-hmm. I looked at his orders. I looked at the last few orders. And still they're in that $15 to $18 range, so I thought maybe you have some in the wish list that we could take a stab at. No.
Wow.
So
nothing, man.
So your $18 it was.
Technically, I think in the rules we don't give away wish lists, but we reserve the right to give anything we want away for free. You can't stop us. So I don't know.
It's
there
a
you
nice
go.
Pen.
You know, wish list. So I think I guess the advantage of wish list is I can check out and then leave that other stuff there.
Yeah, true.
And it will stay there permanently.
Yeah.
So I think if you're a guest, it stays like 30 days in there. If you are a account holder, I think your cart stays for like 60 days.
I think I still have stuff in my wish list from years ago.
All right.
I might. Oh.
All right. Well, you haven't bought it yet, huh?
No, I'm good.
All right. Well. All right, so Steve Hommerding from Battle Creek, Michigan, has got a 5-stage replacement filter kit from Bulk Resupply of $52.99. Going back to his account, former reward points. Congratulations.
Cool. Good job.
Jason Jarrow has got an AFS automatic feeding system from Neptune that he bought. You know what? Going back to his account, $106.05. Man, go buy something else.
Yeah.
Right on. And a cart. Josh Nelson has got $132.98 worth of stuff in his cart. He's got kind of a mix in here. He's got Coral Pro 175-gallon salt, like a bucket of it, which is $72.99. And then Component 123 Aquaforest bundle.
Oh, yeah, that is interesting.
Yeah, they're mixing it up, man. You know, no Aquaforest salt. They're going Aquaforest 1, 2, 3 plus. All right, so that's $60. So there's a total of $132.98. Going back to your account for reward points. Bravo.
Awesome. And that was Josh from Medford, Oregon.
You want that to be you? Hit the link in the bottom, and that could be you too. Add some stuff to your cart.
Cool, congrats, guys.
All right, so today is all about salt. And
it was a hot topic over the weekend.
Now we got a bunch of people joined in. I think I'm going to remind everybody of what a hot topic this is.
Yeah.
And maybe a little bit, we'll start off. So, hey, we're going to talk about the results and a bunch of questions that came up in the YouTube comments. And I think were really good ones. So I thought we should devote most of today to that and just dive in and answering a bunch of oddball questions. But I wanted to start today, first off, with maybe why it's such a hot topic. You know, why do people get so amped up about, their salt? You just don't see that level of engagement on what two-part you use, or what power head you use, all that kind of stuff. But man, with salt, it's like an emotional connection. Like you said, man, go Denver Broncos.
Hey,
man.
it's the basis of the entire hobby. Without salt, we have nothing. So I mean, people could say that about a lot of things in the hobby too. But I mean, you can't make water that keeps everything without the salt mix. So it's the bottom line, the base element.
You know what? The one thing you need for a saltwater tank?
Salt.
I mean, yeah, for sure.
That's it.
So I don't
except
know.
for those of you who have the natural ocean that they decide to go pull from. So I mean, there's that. But
I suppose you still need salt in there.
Yeah,
somewhere.
true.
All right. So I thought we just took a couple of notes, man. We were jamming our minds together about this one. So I thought the first one was, you know what? I think the reason that we debate salt mix all the time is everything that we know about salt is because some manufacturer told us.
Oh, yeah,
You know, like when I say
points.
that, I mean when I say us, I mean you, I mean everybody. It's just from what the manufacturers, like some super awesome, you know, marketing tagline they threw on the bucket,
Explosive graphics on the
yeah.
bucket.
Oh yeah, Flash, man.
Yeah,
Flash. That's awesome. And really anecdotal experiences. Man, I used it, and it seemed like it mixed clear. It seemed like it didn't kill anything.
And that was always a big one for me, is the anecdotal stuff, because I could go to my buddy's garage and look at his hundreds and hundreds of gallons of tanks with tons of awesome looking coral in it, and the first thing I'm going to ask him is, hey, what salt are you using, dude? Because I want to do the same thing. I mean, there you go. So I'm going to try to use that salt.
So, I mean, I guess I'm going to start off by saying, like, there isn't a single salt out there that I know that's going to wipe out the tank. If you used it, it would kill everything because nobody would use it, and we'd all know by now.
Yeah.
Will you have various degrees of success? Maybe. I don't know. There's some other advantages maybe we'll talk about later, but, like, you know, like, if anybody is really super tied to this, like, there are definitely some things to think about. But kill your tank? No.
Yeah.
Is it going to make your stuff grow 100 times faster? No. Could it make it grow twice as fast? Maybe.
Could.
You know,
Yeah.
who knows? So, like, what we'll talk about. So, I'm going to say, again, like your sports team, man, like purchase defense.
Yeah.
You know, if you've been reading all this stuff, man, and, like, I've been, you know, talking to everybody, and I finally selected the salt for me, and I used it, and it worked. It's like a nature, like to defend like what I use. Like I bought the best protein skimmer. Like I need to tell the world about it.
Right.
And so there's just a little bit of that, and especially in the lack of like any real knowledge on the topic, man. There's so little, you know, real information on like one salt versus another one out there.
Well, they're proprietary mixes too, so it's not like the manufacturers are going to say, here's exactly what we put in each one. Here's where we get those additives. Here's where we get those, you know, all of the products that go in there. Here, share your recipe. It's secret guarded, heavily guarded recipes.
Yeah,
so
I mean, there's definitely some smoke and mirrors mixed in there too. You know, like, but yeah, I mean, we're not real clear. Like, you know, some of them say we don't use EDTA and artificial clarifiers and Montmorilla clay. Some of them kind of say we don't use stuff. You know, what does that mean?
Whatever stuff.
Yeah, I mean, like real unclear. And you know, it's hard to say, man, like why they would use that or wouldn't use that. Like definitely a lot of those artificial clarifiers are going to take, you know, real poor sources of mineral from mining or dehydration or whatnot, and then take out the impurities from that or precipitate them out. So, you know, there's definitely reasons. You know, there's also this like weird perception that showed up in the comments that
I saw that.
All of them are come from the same company.
Like,
like
one company is producing 5 or 6 different lines of salts.
I can tell you that is not the case.
No,
you
no,
know,
not at all.
for sure. Like some of them definitely produce other ones for them, right? Like I can tell you for sure that there isn't any of these companies. Tropic Marin's producing Tropic Marin. They're not. None of those other salts are made by them. Red Sea is definitely making their own salts. I think Red Sea does make some salts for some other companies, but I'm like not sure enough to say it out loud. But like not any of the ones that we tested here.
Just a rebranding, so more or less rebranding like Red Sea type salts.
Maybe like a slight formulation change. You know, like I wouldn't be surprised if like D&D salt was made by them, I guess. And I can't say that it is, but that one wouldn't surprise me in that case. And so in the same frame of the HW, you know, like the Toon salt, the Zeovit salt, and the HW salt come in remarkably similar packaging, and when we did ICP tests, give remarkably similar results. So, like, I wouldn't be surprised in that one. But Instant Ocean maybe makes salt for somebody. I don't know, but they make their own, you know, Instant Ocean and IO. And what was the other one?
Brightwell Neomarine.
Oh, Brightwell is making their own for sure. And I think is that the whole list?
The Tropic Marins, the Red Seas. So that's it.
There's not one magic company that's making them all, so it isn't the same across the board. And there's a perception out there. I think the last one, man, why this is such a hot topic is
when we talked about it like a few weeks ago. It's like cost, and this is probably the one where we were talking in his office where it's talking about. This is the one where like I go to the dog parks all the time with my dog, and say I see somebody with the same dog as me, and it looks my representation of what I want my dog to look like, health-wise, nice coat, you know, good build and things like that. And the first thing I'm going to ask him is, hey, what are you feeding him? And then, so for me, that choice is based off of, you know, what I like and what the quality of my dog. But for some people, that choice is based on cost. Like, where am I going to get it, and how cheap can I get it, and does it keep my dog alive? Then that's the bottom line. As long as it keeps my dog alive. So cost is a big one.
Opposite, you know, got a cat, right?
Yeah.
Cat, you know, you can feed, you know, some, you know, grocery store food or whatnot, and I definitely have been guilty of that in the past. And then I feed him the like raw food from this place called Woody's by my house. I just more or less take a chicken, throw him in there, blend it up, you feed him the chicken. And like, it is not an anecdotal thing, man. His coat is noticeably brighter and fuller and like healthier looking, and like the way less poops, way less stinky. You're like, and you're like, well, all right. So what if like one of us were eating a diet, man, that like, hey man, cleared up your complexion and also your bowel movements? I'd say there's probably some correlation to the fact that what you're eating is good for you.
Yeah, true. And there's probably some associated costs with that too, right? I mean, it's not like I'm going to McDonald's and spending $2 and getting the same complexion and body and all of that versus, you know, this higher priced diet.
Well, that's a good point, because what you found in that when you did all the salt testing on the cost, it was like
cost
about
per gallon.
$5 or something a month.
Yeah.
And then it was probably even cheaper if you went out, like people shared that if you want to get the box of Instant Ocean,
yeah, true.
you know, it's even cheaper. So maybe you save $7-8 a month or something. So there's a cost associated, the differences. And the big thing, though, man, is are there any differences, or is it all smoke and mirrors?
Yeah.
Because if it's all smoke and mirrors, then I'm just wasting $7 or $8. If there's $7 or $8 I can see
Worth
actual
of
value
difference?
from,
Yeah.
all right, well, I'll consider now.
Okay.
So I think that's kind of what we're going to get at over the next few weeks, and you guys can just all make a decision for yourself. But my super big hope here is that we get away from anecdotal, like mine is the best because the sticker on the front is the coolest. I bought into the marketing pitch or, you know, whatever. And somebody even called us out, man, because we said, like, hey, we use HW here, you know, and so everybody ran out and bought HW or whatnot. Like, hey, I don't know. Like, at the time, there wasn't ICP testing. It's just what we were using here and having success with and shared with the universe. I guess anecdotal is the best, right? Or not the best. Anecdotal is the same description of that. You know, hey, this is what we're using. I don't think we were saying, like, hey, man, this is the best. You have to go use it. Right. It's just, here's our results using X. You know, follow along if you want.
Well, I mean, we even lose money shipping salt, right? So it's not like we're trying to push one or the other to make more money on it. We lose on every single one that leaves.
That is the best. I mean, the funniest part of the whole thing. And I wish we could get past this thing. It's like, hey, you're pushing one salt over another one because it's cheaper or whatever. Like, it doesn't matter. Or like, do water changes because you make money. Every salt that leaves here, might as well strap $5 to it, because shipping 50-pound buckets of salt around the nation is not cheap. Yeah. In fact, it's astronomically expensive. And in fact, early on in the days, man, I just refused to sell salt, like, because it was all just a loser. Yeah. And so, like, but it's a conversation you had earlier. What's the one thing you need to have a saltwater tank?
Salt. Yeah.
All right. So we sell salt. All right. I don't know, but you know, and we lose on it every time. But so it doesn't really matter. Pick whatever one you want from our end. I just want to help make a world where we can look at it and better understand, you know, how it might fit your reefing needs or not. You know, whatever your priority might be.
For sure.
All right. So what are the differences? There are definitely cost differences.
Yeah, I think Instant Ocean.
We went through that,
came in like $15-18 a month on a 100-gallon tank. On our 100-gallon tank example, Tropic Marin was like 22, 23 or something like that. So
yep. There are storage differences, which you saw in last week,
and we'll see again in like the next couple episodes. So Friday's storage, we learned some things. Next week we'll learn some things about what's left over in the storage.
Yep. There is the need to correct level differences. So, like, if the calcium level is 375, I have to go there and manually, you know, correct it. Both, I guess, you know, use test kits, and I got to go in and use my time and dump some stuff in there, and then recheck it, make sure it actually worked. So
time for the most part is probably the thing about that. I mean, cost of your additives to adjust it, maybe cost of the reagents to test it.
I mean,
it's added cost into what you already have.
It's 50 cents, right?
Well, true.
But the difference is only $4 to begin with. You know, so like, yeah, I mean,
versus picking one that's more
already
more
there?
in your levels. Yeah, that's true.
So you've saved half. Yeah, I don't know. Get the one that fits, in my opinion. But that's just me.
That makes sense.
And it doesn't matter. Any one of them, whatever one fits the levels that you have, is the one that I think you should pick. Especially though, picking the one like if it's under, at least you can go up. True. If it's over, you can't go down.
It's tough.
So definitely I'd go that direction. There is definitely a perception of undissolved or insoluble differences.
Yeah,
right?
there's leftovers in the tanks, which is what we're getting at this week on Friday. I'm working on the video now about what's left over for some of those that precipitate out, color changes, differences. What is that stuff? So.
I mean, all of us, well, not all of us. Some of you don't even know what I'm talking about because your bucket stays clean all the time, and you're like, that's just not an issue for me.
Not true.
Some of you are like, yeah, man, my pumps are just constantly jamming in my saltwater mixing bin. The thing is covered in crust, and it ain't white. Yeah. It's like brown, brown and full of garbage, and my heater's coated in stuff. Yeah. And you're like, yeah, that's me.
Well, this also hits people that don't store salt water too, in that, if I make up a 5-gallon bucket or 2 5-gallon buckets at a time, I don't get to see the same results that somebody does in a long-term storage where this stuff precipitates out. I just put it in my tank and I never see it. But you're still putting that stuff in your tank. You'll see, and you'll visually see what actually happens or what that stuff
can show up somewhere in your tank instead of your saltwater mixing bin.
Yeah, true.
Right? Yeah. Most of that stuff when you see it, like, I'd rather stay in the bin, not in the tank.
True.
Or I would say this, like, some people might not care, but when you look at it and say, would you mind if I scooped that up and dumped it in your tank? You say, hell no.
Oh, no.
No way, man. Get the hell out of my house. Yeah, there's no way, man.
And there's some that don't do that at all. So, I mean, it'll be interesting to see.
Yeah, so some are totally clean and you don't even know, and you're like, that's not useful because you picked the right one to begin with. So, I don't know, man, let's just get past all that. Let's get some actual data. It may not be revolutionary, but you'll have like 5-6 touch points. You can pick the thing for yourself and decide for yourself, is it worth the $4? Is it worth my time? And make up your own decision. And especially now that, like, really, I think it goes, Instant Ocean being the cheapest at all costs, right?
I think across the board, even the stuff that we don't carry.
Yeah, and then almost all the rest of it was the same price, and then Tropic Marine's pharmaceutical stuff was so most of them like $3 more, and then the Tropic Marine were like, I don't know, $5 or $6 more a month. Mm-hmm. And so, you can kind of pick what value it makes for you and which one of these things justifies the cost. Mm-hmm. All right, so what did we find out in Friday? We're going to get right to it.
Well, we found out that pretty much all of them, can you just store it and trust that the levels of alkalinity and calcium are pretty much going to stay stable throughout your storage. Like, we're 3 weeks or more. I could choose most of them. Mm-hmm. And be all right, which really works. I mean, for our benefit, like large. We got a 300-gallon reservoir, and right behind us a 270-gallon reservoir. And I mean, we may not blow through that in a whole week. We may not blow through it in a whole month. So to salt that holds its alkalinity and calcium, that's something that I want.
Yeah, and you read the forums or whatnot, or really just any feedback from anywhere, and it's usually that you can't store salt for very long, or it's going to lose its levels. And so I just kind of assumed that was true. Yeah. And then it would fall to some degree, but it would level out with my tank, and I'd probably correct for that with a little bit stronger 2-part dose or whatnot. I just kind of assumed that was real. And then the reason that we tested this actually is Lou over at Tropic Marine shared with us like the differences between the Classic one and the Pro.
Yeah, Classic has the elevated alkalinity in that 9 to 10 DKH range, but lower calcium in the 380 DK or in the 380 parts per million range. Conversely, the Pro has the lower alkalinity at like the 7 DKH range, but the higher calcium in like the 440 range.
Yep. And so, you know, or at least those are what it's supposed to be.
Yeah.
You know, like they vary.
They were relatively close.
Vary. So, and I'm like, well, why not have them both up? And he's like, no, because it's going to cause precipitation.
Yeah.
You know, like you can either have one up or the other. You're going to store the salt and use it at a time. We want to make sure the stuff doesn't precipitate out in your bucket. And I'm like, huh. Marketing pitch or real?
Yeah, let's test
it. Like, yeah, I mean, like, because if that's real, man, and all the rest of them are, you know, precipitating out, and those two don't, sign me up for the $4.
Well, we've experienced it firsthand with some of those that precipitate out in our storage bins, where like once every 2 months you got to run a full thing of citric acid through, because I remember there being sheets of precipitate on the edges. I even had to crawl into the barrel to get it off the bottom.
It's a big barrel too.
It's taller than me.
Yeah, so I didn't know, you know, like I hear a lot of pitches,
yeah,
you know, about whatever. And so, and like we're doing auto water changes here, like what did you call it? Like auto water change convert or something?
AWC Nation, Auto Water Change Nation.
Yeah, Auto Water Change Nation, man.
You want a t-shirt?
We're going to get some shirts. Yeah, so I don't know. I wanted to find out the answer. So poor Randy here did like 8 million tests.
It was some vigorous testing, let me tell you. 4 hours out of a day.
Yeah, you wouldn't think it would take that long, man. But you know what? If you do it right, it does take that long.
Yeah, the testing procedures is something we'll talk about here in a bit too. But the testing procedures that we use are, I don't think, personally, when I was testing at home, I would never test that way. I'm testing, the testing procedures we use for any of our tests is like we're in a laboratory environment. Gloves, you know, pipettes that measure, all this other stuff. Drops, the way you drop, all that stuff.
I mean, you know, so I get weird looks when people ask me like what I do, like my neighbors come over or whatever, and like, yeah, I sell pumps and heaters and stuff. And like, really? That's a job?
Yeah.
I don't know, you wouldn't think. But you. And you're like, yeah, I don't know. I test salt to make sure it doesn't lose alkalinity for a living, like 4 hours a day. That's what I'm doing. Like, you must get the weirdest looks.
It's right up my alley. I had a microscope when I was a kid. That's all I wanted for Christmas was a microscope. So, science.
Yeah, man. So anyway, we found out, and the answer was, I guess, you know, I don't know, pretty interesting. The fact that the Tropic Marin lived up to its name, or to the pitch, anyway.
I mean, we're looking at these tanks right now. We're capturing the footage of it to show everybody for this week. And I've got poker chips that we're setting on the bottom, so you can black and white, so you can see what's on the bottom to see precipitation or anything. And they're still like glass clear.
From the levels wise, though, the Instant Oceans maintain a pretty stable level. Both of them, and the
HW
did.
The Neo, the Brightwell stayed the flattest, I think, out of all of them. There was the least variance on calcium and alkalinity for the Neo Marine.
You know, I gotta be honest. Brightwell was like not really on my radar until like we started talking to WWC guys. But as like the conversation progresses, I'm finding like all kinds of little things in here that I like about the brand.
The cost per gallon analysis for HW was that said, you know, it makes 150 gallons, and sure it does make 150 gallons.
The only one.
The only one.
Yeah. Like another one's way off. And like you know, I just kind of felt like those little bricks that they make were Me Too products. You know, like the
ceramic media.
Yeah, but you know what? It's way harder and like doesn't crumble in my hands. True. And I like the little dimples it allows for the
water
flow and stuff.
Yeah,
I don't know. So I don't know. It's interesting that they perform the stablest in that whole regard as well. And then actually Red Sea did exactly what I expected to do, and probably what Red Sea would even tell you as well. Is that
it's precipitated out.
It's super high levels of calcium alkalinity?
Purposely high, elevated, which some people like. And I mean, you go look at the forums, you go look at the you know, people who, the user base of Red Sea Coral Pro, which is pretty massive, and look at their tanks, and they've got some awesome looking tanks. A lot of people like that high level alk and high level calcium that they don't have to adjust. For a lot of the people, depending on the size of their tank, they don't have to dose anything for maybe a longer period of time or extended period of time.
Yeah, if you had like a softy tank or something, you could probably let it ebb and flow a little bit.
Yeah.
So yeah, I don't know. I think almost everybody would have guessed that, though. If you were going to store salt for a month, I wouldn't use elevated elements. And we'll get to the Instant Ocean one, which is they did it pretty well, and it's kind of an interesting conundrum. But we'll get to that in just a minute. But I think that you know, the Coral Pro performed exactly the way you would, they would probably tell you that it would perform, which is if you want these elevated elements, you should use it freshly after mixing. And one of the, I mean, I can't tell you this for sure, but you know, somebody asked in one of the comments once, like, well, what if you have those high elements in your tank? Won't it just precipitate there too? And I think the difference there is in you're mixing up a salt in a bucket. They're all super fresh crystals, right? And so they haven't really bonded with anything yet. They can form calcium carbonate pretty readily and then just start building that crystal to precipitate out pretty fast. In your tank, a lot of that stuff's already been poisoned with magnesium and prevents the precipitation. It's just a different environment in your tank than it is freshly mixing it up in a bucket or whatnot. So a little bit different, but if you're going to use the Coral Pro, I'd probably use it. You know, I'd build it, I'd mix it up and use it. I wouldn't store it for a month. And like I said, I'm pretty certain that they would tell you the same thing. All right. So what else do we find out here? What do we still need to know?
Well, there's the next iteration of this test is what a lot of people do too is like the way I used to mix my salt water, fill up a Brew trash can, mix my salt water in there. Well, I'd throw a heater in there, throw my power head in there, dump my salt, and come back and test it continually and with my digital refractometer until it hit 35, and then I'd let it sit and circulate and heat until it hit 78 degrees or something like that, because I didn't want a big temperature fluctuation. My water's cold from the basement. So what we still need to know is how does temperature and aeration affect the precipitate. Some would think that would make it precipitate faster. Some would think that it's more soluble, so it'd probably be slower. Or there's a post on our Reef to Reef thread where I forget the guy's name. I think it was Sleepy Doc. I think he posted on there. He was talking about at higher temperatures, it might be less likely to precipitate out.
Really, I would assume the exact opposite. So it'll be interesting to see, because where all the precipitate tends to happen is on warm objects.
Yeah, true.
Heaters, pumps, impellers, and stuff like that. So it'll be super interesting to see. My suspicion here is all of them are going to store poorly in heated, well-mixed salt water. So I guess we'll see the answer to that question, but I think you're going to learn that if you want to use like an auto water changer, or you want to just have water on hand at all times, or mix water once and use it over the course of the month, whether it be 10% water changes weekly or 20% bi-weekly or whatever it is, that you're probably not going to want to mix it up and heat it. But if, so you might say, well, why would anybody want to heat it then? And it's what you just said, man. Yeah,
you're to reduce heavy, wide fluctuations of temperature in the tank. Reduce shock, I guess, more stability in the end. So, when you're mixing it up, like so for me, like if I was going to store, 60 gallons and not heat it because it might increase precipitation, then maybe I could draw a little bit out and heat a 5-gallon bucket before I use it, or something like that. I don't know. How would you combat that if you don't want it heated all the time, but you want to not have a large temperature fluctuation when you go to use it?
I'd mix up what you need to do and then heat it up, man. So I'd probably heat the water first and get the water warm first and then mix it up. And that's actually inverse of what I think Red Sea says to do in their bucket. But it's going to take a really long time to heat up my basement. It's cold.
True.
So it's not going to heat up. So if I want to do like a 30% water change on my tank or whatnot, or like a lot of people do 50%, especially on tanks where they don't have super sensitive corals in it, and do 50% once a month because that fits their lifestyle. And if you match the alkalinity, temperature, and other parameters, I've never seen a negative result from doing a 50% water change.
Right.
Especially on a tank that doesn't have a lot of super sensitive corals in it. So in that case, though, I'm definitely going to adjust the temperature in there. So it's going to be really interesting if we measure at 1 hour, 2 hours, 4 hours, 24, whatnot. How long can you mix it before you need to use it? Right?
Yeah.
In relation to that, also in the oddball thing, that another thing people really, again, probably because there isn't a lot of definable things other than just kind of noticing what's going on with your salt. A lot of people talk about how fast it mixes up. right? How clear it is.
Oh yeah, yeah. For some reason, that's like a big selling point for people when it comes to salt. You read people's opinions on salt, and I like this one because it mixes up clear right away, and I like this one because it mixes up clear.
I've said that at some point,
and I'm pretty sure we've said it. Yeah, we've said it before. I know I've said it in some spotlight videos and stuff like that. But I don't know if it really matters. Like,
it doesn't matter in comparison to other stuff, I think.
Well, yeah, like when it's weighted, does your alkalinity and calcium hold true for a while? Does it not have insolubles?
If I'm going to use it right away, heat the water up, and then I want to mix it and then use it in my tank, man, I guess maybe it does matter, man, in that case.
Yeah, for those that aren't storing it and that are probably using it, within that first hour or two, if it takes your salt mix more than like 4, 5, 6 hours to mix clear, then that's 4, 5, 6 hours more that I have to add into my preparation for a water change.
So we mixed up all 8 of them and time-lapsed each one 24 hours.
24 hours.
We've been going 2 weeks on this now.
Yeah.
There's only 5 work days in a week, and we failed on the first 5 trying to figure out how to make it.
Figure out how to look good and
look good on camera and whatnot.
But I just put the last batch of salt in today, so we should have the results of that anytime after tomorrow.
Yeah, maybe that'll be next week's.
Yeah.
So yeah, I don't know. I think we'll learn on that one too. All right. So I think there's a couple other things. There's like a bunch of them actually. So what is the precipitate that's in that bucket, man?
Yeah, that's another thing we have to learn.
Some of them are brown and some are white.
Some were brown and precipitate, but didn't show signs of precipitate in the testing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So what is that stuff? If it didn't precipitate out in calcium carbonate, and we didn't see a drop somewhere in the alkalinity, maybe calcium range, then what was that is on the bottom?
I know there's a super heavy debate on Reef about this one too.
Yeah, for sure.
So like the Coral Pro, for instance, had a lot of precipitate in it over the course of 3 weeks. Mm-hmm. There's a white coat on the bottom. Definitely. Right?
Is.
And that is exactly what I'd expect out of a calcium carbonate precipitate, is a nice white coat.
And it's white.
Yeah. Like the coral skeleton's white. It's calcium carbonate. The salts themselves are largely white, right? And if you plucked out all the little impurities, it wouldn't be, but largely to the eye, it looks white. So don't be surprised that it mixed up that way. So what about the ones that are brown? And they have this brown scum on the bottom.
I mean, a good place to start, if you want to prep for this video or for that video, like a good place to start is like go look at our, BRS Investigates series on the alkalinity, calcium, magnesium, and kalkwasser, where you can see between, pharma grade stuff versus other bulk options versus, hobby grade versus tech grade, like driveway ice melt. And you can see the same type of thing. Like there's brown stuff in there. There's stuff at the bottom of a settling cone in there. But we don't know what it is. Yeah.
Good, bad, I don't know. But like I wouldn't scoop it up and pour it in my tank on purpose. Will it kill anything? Probably not. Is it good?
I don't know.
For $4? Maybe I don't want it. But you'll get to see, I guess. I don't know if we'll be able to definitively share, man, like exactly what it is.
Yeah.
One of the things I'd like to do, though, is try to dissolve it in an alkalinity test. So, let's mix it up or suck some off the bottom there, and then put it into an alkalinity test. And the alkalinity test should bust the bond up because the pH is so low. And then it should, if it's calcium carbonate, it should read a sky-high reading of alkalinity, and I guess it should be off the charts.
Yeah,
the thing should say I can't read this. So it'll be really interesting to see if that's the case. But I can tell you, some are white as you'd expect, some are brown, and I do not think brown means calcium carbonate. It might be bound up in there somehow, dirty brown calcium carbonate, but it is not just calcium carbonate for sure.
What is that? Mainly probably where they source the materials from, maybe impurities.
Yeah. So I mean that's the thing, man. Like most people probably don't even know where all this stuff comes from, but like sodium chloride, magnesium chloride, calcium chloride, all these things are all mined stuff out of the ground. Like so they mine, ore or not ore, but they mine like limestone out of the ground, or they go to dehydration ponds and go out and let the ocean dehydrate back into sodium chloride, and they'll do various things to it along the ways to get them to settle out into different things. But man, it's out in the open. There are, you know, birds out there, and so like feathers and you know, bat poop and stuff, man, like a dust, whatever. You know, I'm sure it goes through some kind of refinement process after that. But you know, like, don't be surprised. I mean, this is a little bit of a giveaway, but like, don't be surprised either. Like, we did all those tests, and the pharmaceutical stuff didn't have anything in the bottom.
Yep.
Guess what? The Tropic Marin's pharmaceutical grade salts, nothing in the bottom.
There is nothing in it.
Yeah, so like, it's a purified source. It's not just mined or evaporated, and it's used for an application which requires that it doesn't have all that garbage in it. You know, pharmaceutical, either I'm going to eat it, it's going to get shot in my body some way, and it can't have bat guano in it. You know, end of story, right? So, all right, so there's a couple of these other things about why the test levels went up or down. So what's the first one?
Yeah, well, I mean, to give some backstory.
One second. Meaning that we got kind of a ripple effect of the testing. Like, it went up or down throughout the course of the 3 weeks, and you wouldn't think that like calcium would miraculously pop out of thin air. So why do you think?
Well, yeah, we've got some graphs here too that we'll probably get into here a little bit later. But there was a nice flat line for where you started, and then like 4 hours, 1 week, 1 day, 24 hours, 48 hours later, there's this increase of alkalinity somewhere. Where did it come from? Well, it's not like we added, you know, sodium bicarbonate to the water. We got an increase. Plus,
magic alkalinity fairy?
Possibly.
Can't rule anything out.
No. There's also a testing margin that you have to account for too. Like the HANA the HANA alkalinity checker has a plus or minus 0.3 DKH range.
That's 0.6, by the way, if anybody's doing the math in there. So it's within. Yeah, that's a 0.6 range.
Yeah, so if I read 8, that really could be anywhere from like 7.7 up to like 8.3, somewhere in that range. Which, you know, if you're at 8, that's not terrible. But so where did that bump come from? It happened from visually from watching it. I feel I saw when it happened, which was a precipitation event, or right around when I could start to see, you know, precipitate form on the glass and on the bottom of the glass and things like that. It was about the same time when that started developing. So some way that the acid dissolves the calcium carbonate in the water, I don't know.
So the first thing I'd say is testing error. So like, Randy's done a lot of tests, and especially by the end of this, they probably got more accurate as time went on.
By procedural, you know.
First time you sat down at the desk and you started doing it, and maybe it was like not as perfect as the last time, or vice versa. You know, you're a human being, you're doing a little hobby grade test kit, and how you read the exact shade of pink or purple or blue or whatever is the end color is different amongst everyone. And so what I'll say about the test kits is procedure needs to be perfect. You know, it says 30 seconds, do 30 seconds, not a minute and a half. Not like, oh, that felt like 30, but it was 10. And like, if you did the 10, it's probably going to be in the neighborhood, but the quality of the results will go down, right? And so like with those things, it's a little, you know, it's just the ballpark. You're just trying to get close. With the HANA checker, my experience is I could do the test 10 times and, you know, 9 times or 8 times out of 10 will be about the same thing, right? Maybe even 10 out of 10.
Average amount,
It's that one checker is slightly calibrated just a little bit different than the one next to it. So if I do 2 checkers next to each other, they may read something a little bit different one the other, but they'll both be consistent.
You know, that actually did happen too. It's like Aaron came over to help me testing because it's a long procedure and I had to do some other stuff. So he was using the checker that I used throughout the entire testing, where we got the same results from the same checker every time. And then just, I don't know what brought him to it, but he decided he'd bring in his own checker that he was using for his tests. And there was absolutely a difference. There almost like a half a DKH or so.
That's within the 0.6.
Yeah. So
right? Yeah. So that's the thing about it is everybody needs to have like a reasonable expectation. So when you're doing these tests, you're not sending this out to a $5,000 lab to get, you know, absolute precision. It's a hobby grade thing that is supposed to get me close, and that's why like we choose like you know, or why the people over WWC are picking like 8.5 as a DKH, because I can go 0.3 in either direction. It ain't gonna matter, right? Like it isn't gonna produce the results in the tank. If I like decide to ride the edge at 7, and I'm starting to get closer to 6.5, yeah, probably not a good idea. Especially what if the reagent's slightly bad now too for some reason, and I get a little farther away, so or it's old or whatnot. So I think it's super wise to like at least pick 8 or 8.5 or something that gives you a little bit of buffer one way or the other. So here's you got the graph of the Coral Pro versus Coral Pro.
So I've got these built in that we see Red Sea Coral Pro side by side, Alkalinity and Calcium, and then we've got the other one, Instant Ocean, side by side with Calcium.
All right, so pull the Red Sea one for us. Okay, so one of the things you're going to note here is we don't have the numbers on here, but at point 1 is 10 minutes, point 2 is an hour.
An hour, and then number 3 is 2 hours. I'm sorry. Number 1 is 10 minutes. Number 2 is 2 hours. Number 3 is 4 hours. Number 4 is 24 hours. Then we've got the 5 column at 48 hours. 6 is a week. 7 is 2 weeks. 8 is 3 weeks.
All right, so here's the real interesting part. And Dave, leave this up for me, just so everybody can kind of follow along. You'll notice that the calcium level plummeted like right away.
Within that first 4
from
hours.
10 minutes to an hour, man, it already fell like what, 35 points there. Fell another 20 points by 4 hours, and then there's a little bit of margin of error in there, but it fell like really fast. And so one of the questions in there was, well, how come if it's precipitating out calcium chloride or calcium carbonate, why wouldn't have the alkalinity dropped as fast? In fact, it should have dropped even more noticeably.
Like almost 7 times more. It should have, because of the availability of alkalinity versus calcium, that 7-to-1 ratio.
Okay, so there's a super good reason for that, and then we identified it for sure today. And
that's true.
The reason for that is because in the first couple hours, the precipitation event that's happened hasn't settled out in the bottom. And so all the little bits of calcium carbonate precipitate are still floating around the water. Meanwhile, I take my sample, I'm going to suck those little bits up into the sample and put them into my vial. And so with the alkalinity one, with the Hanna checker, they all work off of some kind of pH indicating dye.
Right.
And so we tested the pH after you add the solution to the Hanna checker, and it drops all the way down to what?
Yeah, so the tank pH, so I did a pH test with the reagents today. So the tank pH water was started at 7.9, and then I tested the reagent, after a test. For the Hanna checker, so I took 10 mils of sample water, added 1 mil of alkalinity reagent for the Hanna checker, and then tested the pH of that solution, 4.4, so very acidic.
So because that solution in the test vial is so acidic, if little particles of calcium carbonate precipitate got in the vial, they'd probably resplit back up into calcium carbonate, and you'll see that at all the way to 0.5, which is 48 hours.
Yeah.
It's reading the same amount of alkalinity spot on, even though calcium plummeted. And that's because, or I strongly believe, because inside that test vial with the Hanna checker, that it split those two things up and then misrepresented the amount of available calcium carbonate. However, if you look at the 1 week mark at 0.6, it had settled out on the bottom, and you can visually see all the precipitate at the bottom. It's no longer suspended in the water column.
Now we get an idea of what's available in the water solution.
Yep.
Without it. Yeah, okay.
So why didn't that happen with calcium? And that's because calcium actually raises the pH up to what?
12.8. So calcium. So the calcium, sodium hydroxide, is the alkaline, is the base. So you take the 5 drops of sodium hydroxide, add it to your water solution. So you're adding a base to it. Then you take step 2, the sulfate. That's a little powder, a little scoop of powder. So you take the acidic sulfate, sodium sulfate, which is like sulfuric acid in salt form. And then you add that to step 2, and then you come back with the titrator, which is again sodium hydroxide, and you're adding alkali back to it, and then it changes color based off of that.
The net end of it is 12.8.
Yeah, so the tank, again, the tank water pH, the sample water pH was 7.9, and then after the entire calcium test was completed, the pH of the solution remaining was 12.8, so very base.
Yeah.
Very
so what I'd get out of that is that the Hanna checker is likely to read any signs of precipitate that may be suspended in the water column, and probably any acid-based tritation alkalinity test kit, which probably all of them. We have to check, and then the calcium test kit is unlikely, because the pH is 12.8 in there, unlikely to split the bond between the calcium carbonate little precipitates in there, and so it will accurately read the available calcium in the water. Okay, so that's super nerdy, but it was a really good question, because you would expect both of these things to drop in unison, and they didn't, and they actually did. It's just that the test kit didn't read it properly. So, I would say that it did read it properly. Well, maybe it didn't. It depends on how you look at it, but definitely it didn't read the floating precipitate properly.
Interesting.
Okay, so in relation to that, there was another one that said where IO went up and didn't drop. So pull up that Instant Ocean one here.
Yeah, this was interesting.
So this was do we have the Instant Ocean alkalinity one? Oh, we don't.
Alkalinity is on the left.
Oh, there it is.
This is alkalinity and calcium of Instant Ocean reef crystals.
This is reef crystals.
Yeah.
Okay. So, so the Instant Ocean normal Instant Ocean performed pretty similar to this too. And
it did. It's the only difference here is I think the alkalinity followed suit of the Instant Ocean standard, as you see here in the Instant Ocean reef crystals. The calcium was different in that the Instant Ocean standard had lower calcium. I think it started at 400 or somewhere around there.
But very similar results. If you look at the alkalinity here, it went from 10.6 to like 11.1 there.
Yeah. And
pretty close to the margin of error that you would get with an alkalinity checker.
Right.
Calcium, I think, within the margin of error. The one thing I note here, two things I note. One is the alkalinity checker tends to be off by that amount, but consistent. So, like, if you measured one against the other, it would be off by that. But usually, it's consistent with the same measurement.
So like you just explained with the Red Sea Coral Pro, is in that 48 hours, after we saw the precipitation on the bottom of the glass, then we started to get an accurate reading, or what we would think is an more accurate reading of what is available in the solution. In the same breath, the reef crystals also has precipitate on the bottom of the tank, but didn't show the same drop that Red Sea Coral Pro did. Yep.
Hey, can you flip back, Deb? So yeah, that was one of the things here. Is the Coral Pro had a ton of precipitate on the bottom, but the levels dropped.
Right. As expected.
Yep. Instant Ocean had a bunch of stuff on the bottom. It's kind of brown.
Yeah.
But didn't see any of the levels drop. Right. So that would lead me to believe it's probably not calcium carbonate that's on the bottom of it.
Okay.
Right. I can't prove that for sure yet, but hopefully our alkalinity test will give us an insight into that. And ultimately, I would say that most chemists would say that you couldn't maintain levels of alkalinity near 11 and calcium at 500 and not have any precipitation. So I don't know the answer as to why they do it that way, but I guess I might consider using it if I wanted to maintain my levels that high and store my salt water that long. My only concern is I'd want to get to the bottom of whether or not there's maybe some type of chelator or clarifier or something, or a chelator that's making the calcium or alkalinity less available in the solution.
So it's reading that it's there, it's just not available, or bound in a different way that makes it unavailable.
Yeah, that would be what the chelator would do. So I don't know. Yeah, I guess I just ask Instant Ocean, straight up. I think they openly state they don't use ETA and EDTA or anything like that in the Instant Ocean. But I don't think they make the same claim about reef crystals, so I don't know. But if you were interested, I just ask them directly, and maybe they'd be able to tell you if they use anything like that, or maybe even better, they'd be able to just share, how they're able to maintain super high levels of calcium and alkalinity, and be a super awesome bonus point for using their salt if you wanted high levels.
Yeah, and since we're on the topic of how, somebody had brought up, because we didn't share the magnesium results. And somebody had mentioned it's probably magnesium related, and what are the magnesium results? Well, I did test magnesium throughout the 2 weeks of storage, the first 2 weeks of all of them. We kept up with magnesium, and surprisingly, Red Sea Coral Pro. I mean, I'm only taking these two numbers or these two salts because those are the heaviest they talked about. But Red Sea Coral Pro started at 1380. ended after 2 weeks at 1400, so within the margin of error for magnesium testing. And then in instant ocean reef crystals, similarly, started at 1420 and ended at 1400, the same. So magnesium didn't really seem to play a role here, I don't think.
Yeah, and I don't think that magnesium, it would have to be really different. Like one would have to be like 1100 and the other 1400 to play that kind of role in it. Right. Maybe tighter than that, but like definitely a change of 20 points of magnesium ain't going to make the difference of whether or not you can maintain alkalinity and calcium at a proper level. So yeah, I don't know, magnesium definitely was the same, so it didn't seem to play a role in there at all.
Well, that's probably that's why we didn't. A lot of people, some people were asking why we didn't report magnesium, and because across the salts, the magnesium was pretty much flat. There's really no compelling story to say there. So yeah.
All right, I mean, that was like most of what we got out of last week, you know, and some of the stuff we're going to move forward. So, I don't know. There's a mountain of questions over here. So, let's just answer a bunch of questions and
cool.
We'll share. Is HW Marine Mix going away permanently?
Thomas German at the top there.
No.
They're one of the longest running brands.
I think they're the longest European running brands. Again, I think they make salt for all kinds of other people and not going anywhere. So, in fact, you don't hear a lot of other NUS about them in the United States, but if you talk to anybody or a lot of people in Europe, certainly in Germany, like, oh yeah, HW, man, that's a good one. So, like, a totally different thing here than in there. So,
Vasco is asking, are you going to measure the accumulation of organics in mixed salt water using Triton ND OC and other tests? Actually, I just sent in Triton ND OC and Triton ICP tests, and I've spent last 3 days testing nitrates and phosphates with our thousands of dollars Hawk testing machines on all 8 tanks, and so we'll have some results maybe there to share too.
Yeah, so there's organics in there. I've never sent in the DOC test to Triton yet, so it'll be super interesting to see what it's going to say. But presumption is some of them will definitely, some of them intentional. Like I think reef crystals and HW put like amino acids and stuff in there, and it should probably show up as some kind of dissolved organic in there, either as the amino acid maybe, or definitely if it breaks down into ammonia or nitrate over time, that it would show up there.
Cool.
So yeah, hey man, I forgot. Man, there's so many angles to this salt that like I think we can like
everything.
Hit the whole world. So we actually make an informed choice, whatever it might be.
Yeah, true.
And all right, awesome. What's the next one?
Let's see.
Can you use 2 different types of salt per tank?
I saw that one.
I mean, why would you want to use 2 different types?
I did a video on 50-50 mix of Red Sea Coral Pro and Red Sea Blue Bucket, which I think at the end of that video it was, if you're aiming for somewhere in the middle, it pretty much tested somewhere in the middle of what Coral Pro tested and what Blue Bucket tests. So would you really do that in a real world environment? If you were all about Red Sea and didn't want to use anything Red Sea, you could probably mix the 2 and have less corrections afterward to Blue Bucket. But I don't know.
You know, one of the things about that, I forgot that you did that one, because if you mix the Blue Bucket and the Black Bucket together, presumably you're getting still like a seawater parameters at the end. It's just probably mixed calcium and alkalinity levels in between those 2.
Right.
One of the things is if you correct the salt yourself, using calcium chloride or magnesium chloride or sodium bicarbonate, like you're going to be able to correct those 3 things, but you're also going to raise salinity at the same time.
True,
right?
Yeah.
And so then I'm going to have to dilute it potentially a little bit, especially for the magnesium one. The calcium one, maybe depending on how high you want to go. Like if you want to go from 375 to 500, you're like,
it's a lot of calcium chloride.
It's gonna, you're gonna raise salinity of the solution, especially as it goes down or evaporates. So, like you're gonna have to correct for that. And when you correct for any of those things, or you change the chemistry of it, essentially I'm diluting all of the other elements to some degree, right? Probably not in a degree that actually matters, but like you should definitely know that when I add all of those chemicals and the water and solution to it, that I'm changing not just the amount of calcium and magnesium levels to this, I'm changing the overall chemistry, makeup, and ratio of these things to each other.
True.
So rather than like take Blue Bucket and add sodium carbonate and calcium to it, if I wanted to find a ratio in between the two, I could actually mix them together. So can you use 2 different salts? I mean, you could. I don't know if maybe the question here was, can I like switch salt without, you know, a lot of headache, go from one salt to the next? Like,
dilution is the key here, probably.
Yeah, one of the things that I don't know exactly what the difference is in, and sometimes there's like impurities and stuff in these salts that, like, you know, your corals have just kind of gotten accustomed to over time, and like if you just dumped in tons of that all of a sudden, it'd probably be bad for the tank. It just hasn't, you know, gotten adjusted to that, the presence of that thing. So I wouldn't go ahead and like do 50% water changes with some other random salt that you've been using now. I would
10% gradually over a month or 2 months until you've weaned yourself off of old salt and now you're on new salt.
Or if you're doing an auto water change, I wouldn't even think about it.
Easy,
you know, whatever. But like I don't know. Some people say like mix them together to, like, you know, do that. I just wouldn't go to that length to switch over to a new one. I just wouldn't do super huge ones, and I just kind of get it changed over time.
Yeah, I agree.
All right.
Okay, that was the one we were just saying. Are Brew trash cans good enough for long-term storage, or should I be seeking out a better container? I think there's a lot of people using Brew trash cans out there. Like, it's a common one that comes up in the forums every now and again about Brew trash cans, and are they leaching things like phosphates, and are they leaching anything into the water? And we don't know for sure, I don't think, unless anybody's sent in their ICP of before and after.
I don't even know. A lot of the things that would come out of plastic like that wouldn't show up in an ICP per se. Maybe if there was phosphate or something in there. But this is, I guess, what I would share about it is I've used those things. I mean, all my tanks at home, I used them.
Oh, yeah.
Right? And now I probably would use something different. But, like, I certainly wasn't preventative to success for me. Are they leaching something into the water? I don't know. You know, maybe, man, like, does it matter what's coming out of it? Maybe, if there is anything. If you can measure phosphate out of it, throw it away. Stop using that thing.
Oh, yeah.
You know, but I know a lot of people look for the food grade ones, and so I think you can find food grade ones on websites like Uline or US Plastics or whatever. Yeah. So they're actually food grade buckets, in which case there's, you know, some kind of standard on whether or not you can like leach anything out of it. And probably not perfect, but, you know,
if it's fit for human consumption, you know, it's probably good for.
You know, that's a weird perception, actually. No, because I drink water out of my tap. And, you know,
that's not good for a reef tank.
It is not good for a reef tank.
That's
There's
true.
Copper in there. There's ammonia in there. There's chlorine on there. And so the standard of it's good enough for me means it's good enough for a sensitive species like Acropora is wrong, man. That is not the right universe. But it is actually going that direction.
Yeah.
Right? And so one of the things I saw is one of the like industry players a while ago did an article on like how the brute trash cans might be bad, right? And might leave some kind of chemical or something, right? And but don't know if it's bad. And like I got really mad about that one, man, because like then everybody asks, okay, what's safe to use? I don't know. Well, there's no help, man, to reefers to come up and say, hey, you know what, the thing that you're using could potentially be bad, really bad, but maybe it's not bad at all. And what's the solution? There isn't really one.
Oh, man.
Like, what the help is that at all, man? There's no help at all. And so I felt like that was irresponsible to share and sends everybody scattering, because really the only thing after that is these huge drums that are designed for water storage and chemical purity issues, and they're like anywhere from a couple $100 to like $500.
Not affordable for a lot of people.
No, man. Like who's got $500 to put into a water storage drum in their basement, of which I might need 2?
When I can go to the hardware store and get like a 20, 45 gallon one, 60 gallon one for like $20, $30.
You know, if you do have money for that, man, like, pat yourself on the back. You've been working hard in your life, and you deserve that bucket. But not everybody can spend $1,000 on buckets. True. And so that was not helpful. So to me, I would seek the food grade Brew trash cans out. And I think, I don't know what it is, but there's some kind of recycle number on there too, I think. They say NSF on the bottoms and whatnot. So I would use them. I can't tell you for sure that they're never going to leach anything, but if my grandma called me up and said, could I use this, I'd say, no problem, you know, Grandma, go ahead and use it. Like, you can trust in me. And so, like, I would advise anybody, but, you know, I can't guarantee for sure. It is a really weird question because nobody's come up with a better alternative. Yeah. Let's pick another one.
Ryan asked a question that we pretty much answered here, but we'll just hit it again. What's the best process to switch salts? Would you start slowly implementing it, like 4 parts to 1, or vice versa, or what have you? I think you know, small, like we said, small water changes, small percentage water changes over however many weeks or months or whatever. So at 10% a week, your dilution, you know, of your 90 or 100% of tank water went down to 90% with the new salt. So now you've got 90% old water, 10% new water. Probably not going to be a huge change, if there's any change at all.
This is best practice information that I think we're sharing with people. Yeah. I can tell you here that for a long time we used whatever salt was broken.
Oh yeah.
You know, like, I mean, they break in pallets coming in here, right? Yeah, and so, like, whatever salt is essentially free is the one we were using, you know, for many years. Yeah. And so it wasn't preventative to success, and I didn't see anybody's tank flipping over bad because of it. And especially if you're using, like, one of the salts that, you know, there's what, a dozen or so at the top of the list that, you know, are all doing good work. Yeah. The one that nobody ever heard of or brand new to the market, you are definitely the trailblazer. You may get shot in the back, or you may find really cool things for the rest of us. You know, who knows which one. All right, what's the best oh, no, you already did that one. So if I use Tropic Min Pro and adjust the DKH up to 8.6, do you think I should expect precipitation? You know, that's something that we should actually test as well. That's a good idea. You know, and that's probably in relation to every salt out there. But, you know, my expectation is actually probably not, because only ones we saw precipitation from were really high, like, you know, like 12 DKH, right? Yeah, so up to 8.6, you go up a point. I don't think you're going to see that, but you know, whatever. So I guess we'll see. Hey, there was like one in there that says, you're gone. You go back to the other one. So they don't like HW anymore, LOL. So that is not the case. And so I'll share why that we switched from HW here. And so if you can flip it up there, oh, there it is. There we go. Okay, so I mean, anytime we switch anything, the assumption is we didn't like the other one, it was bad or whatever, right? And so the reason that we switched from HW here in the office is purely for BRStv Investigates, and because most of the bins around here need to be available for that. And the HW salt has a whole bunch of amino acids and stuff in it that are probably healthy for the coral, but not good for a lot of different tests, because,
well, especially for, like, if we're running a test that we're testing specifically like nitrates and phosphates or something like that, and our salt is skewing some of those results, then it's not worth using.
Yeah, it's possible some of the amino acids could break down over a long enough period of time, and once it's mixed up in the solution, and could throw the tests off. So while it might actually be really beneficial for home use, for you know, use around here, we just I switched to
Blue Bucket after that.
You know, we switched to Blue Bucket because I couldn't get any nitrate readings out of it, but I'll tell you that we went to Black Bucket for a little while, but there was so much precipitation that the pumps are jamming constantly. So I went to Blue Bucket for a really long time, then ultimately switched over this because we used a sediment filter to filter out all the gunk out of the buckets, and it gets just covered in this brown kind of smear. It does. And so we use this, and it's crystal clear all the time, and there's no more need to clean out the bins and stuff. And so here in a work environment, like I got a lot of people here that are cleaning stuff and like spending time cleaning out the 300-gallon bins all over the place. We'd like to reduce that as much as possible. right?
Yes.
Yes. And so, you know, it's really important. Like, we hired techs almost exclusively now to do that kind of stuff.
Yep.
And I'd rather him do experiments and whatnot for you guys than clean out salt bins, you know? So that is the reason. It's not that we don't like it anymore. It is just that we, like, there's a better option for the Investigate series.
Sure.
All right.
And whoever asked it, it's somewhere in there. We are taking questions from both Facebook and YouTube. So.
Oh, all right. Where is Ask BRStv Facebook chat found? I couldn't find it anywhere.
It's for the live stream. So we're live streaming to the. Anytime we do these Monday live streams, it's not to the Ask BRStv group, Facebook group. It's actually to the Bulk Reef Supply Facebook page, and then it goes live on that page. So if you were looking for that. That's where you can find the live chat that we're talking about right now and pulling it. He must have found it because we pulled this question. So,
boom. Also, maybe he's having a hard time finding the actual Ask BRStv group.
True.
So,
it's hashtag AskBRStv.
Yeah, hashtag AskBRStv, and you just ask to join, and somebody will approve you in a minute. There's 3 questions, like, don't be a dink, and we'll let you in.
12,000 members.
Yeah, 12,000. We went up like 4,000 in a week. So yeah. Any chance you'll see you guys do anything with the ESV salt? Seems to never be mentioned anymore.
So this was not specifically this one, but this was another big one that we got over the weekend. Was why we only test these 8 salts and not all of the salts out there. So.
That was a pretty big one.
That was a big one.
Yeah, because everybody's got their favorite salt. I don't have anything against ESV. My knowledge is you mix the sodium chloride with their like trace element mix or whatever, or this comes in different parts and you mix it together. I've never used it, to be honest, and that's like more steps than I want to do for a salt mix, and like kind of probably the only reason we don't sell it. There's probably some benefits to that, making sure that it's homogeneous if you measure it out accurately. Oh, yeah. And you know what? Maybe I'll go tell Zach to go look at it right now. But there was other ones, and so like, you know, there was like a real heavy debate about it, and so there's 2 sides of that coin. You know, half of the people are out there like, you know, yeah, of course they're not going to test anything they don't sell. And the other half is like, well, they have a responsibility to like test this and that and whatever. Like I don't know. So in the end, man, there was like 8 tanks we wanted to set up to do salts, and we test the ones that we sell. I didn't go out buying salt for somewhere else, you know. And the ones that we sell are very intentional. Like I don't tap $5 to every box that leaves here. They all like lose money shipping it. So the ones that we bring in are the ones that we think are the best options, and we've gone through all the popular ones. We have definitely tested in-house in a variety of different ways. And so if we don't sell it, there's probably a good reason for it. But even beyond that, like, you can look at it like, hey man, why didn't you test those things? Or you can look at it like, well, hey man, you're selling those things, and we have a responsibility to share how good they are and how they work for you guys that they're buying them.
True.
And so I feel like we're delivering on our end. I don't see any of our competitors or anything out there making sure the stuff that we're selling is good for its purpose, and trying to make sure that you use it the way that you want, that will achieve the results you're looking for. So it was a little harsh, man, the negative that you don't test every last salt known to man.
That's true. And in relation to like my time and the effort, like it took a lot. We're talking just for running the alkalinity, calcium, and magnesium, timing each one so that on exactly at 2 hours, I'm drawing a sample from 4 tanks. By the time I finish that one, I'm drawing the next sample of that. This is 4 to 6 hours of my day of just sitting there, nose to the grindstone testing.
None of that, man, but like the calcium reactor ones and stuff, just do the timing of a lot of this stuff. I mean, it's coming in the weekends, like coming in Saturday and Sunday to like take the tests and readjust the machinery to make sure that we can get our stuff done. It's like, there's only so much we can do in a day. So I appreciate the desire to hit them all, and sometimes it's appropriate, and sometimes, man, we just can't do every last thing under the sun. But we do try to make sure the things that most people, the most popular options that people are picking up from us, we give as much clarity in how to achieve the results you're looking for with them, and hopefully that is well received. And all right, let's see if we got another one here.
Yeah,
God, there's so many. 408 though.
How does magnesium play into maintaining alkalinity and calcium levels?
Oh, where's that? Okay, so go ahead.
Go ahead.
No, all right, me. All right, so basically what's happening is the calcium and carbonate are finding each other in the tank, and we have so much calcium and carbonate in the tank that they would form a crystal, and once it forms a crystal, it likes more crystal and wants to grow. And that's how it's going to fall. Not inside the coral, but actually in the water itself. However, we enter magnesium into the role, and the magnesium will like get onto the surface of the crystal and poison it and make it less attractive to growing with more calcium and carbonate. So maintaining magnesium levels is actually what allows us to maintain the high alkalinity and calcium levels. If you don't maintain magnesium, don't be surprised if you have issues maintaining calcium and alkalinity. It's not used as heavily in actual biological function. It's there to make sure the other things operate properly.
Cool.
All right. Can you use a comparison of the salinity meter, or can you do a comparison of the salinity meters? Yeah, you know, I think we absolutely can. I'd be interested to figure out how we'd identify which one's the right one.
Yeah, that's true. And then we have a new one that we recently brought in that says, yeah, it's from Hanna, and it's tests its electrical conductivity instead of refractiveness. So.
Yeah.
So
that's interesting actually, because we've received like a half dozen of those things, and Zach, you know, gets them and then tests them and uses them for a couple of weeks, and then decides if we're going to sell them or not. And all the other ones we got hit the trash. And my expectation actually was this one was going to hit the trash too, that because I haven't seen the electrical conductivity one that I would use to measure anything to get it accurate enough that I would replace a refractometer or a digital refractometer, but it met his standards for that. So I think we'll see over time if that becomes a more popular option.
Cool.
All right. Can 10% weekly water changes in a softy LPS tank realistically reduce the need for dosing, or will dosing ultimately be needed sooner or later? I can tell you in the softy tank that it wasn't enough.
Oh, they're just water changes alone.
Yeah, I did 3% water changes every day, which is actually a lot.
We thought we wouldn't have to buffer it, I think, initially. Yeah.
I was wrong. I still do a little bit of the one part from Tropic Marine, which is that like calcium chromate. And so it adds calcium in like a biological element of carbonate, or actually the chromate turns into carbonate. So it's just a one part. I think I do 18 milliliters a day in that case. So it did require just like a little teeny bit of dosing in addition to that. I mean, I guess that you could, you know, probably use a really elevated. So I think that's one of the things that people use the like Coral Pro for. Is if you use something that's significantly higher than where you want to manage it, I can do a 10% water change and it'll add it just a little bit. But if I want to maintain 8 and I'm using something at 8, it's just going to dwindle over time. So.
Well, and there's a ton of coralline algae in that tank too, on the glass and on the rocks and all over the place. So your consumption's going up.
All right. I have a question. When dosing auto water changes, do you keep the mixing in the bucket or just leave it as that?
So I'm guessing if we have an auto water change storage, do we have to, and we wanted to increase the levels, would you?
No. So I have a question. When using an auto water change, do you keep the water mixing in the bucket or just mix the cells clear and leave it at? So we just mix it and leave it, and we don't heat it.
So if we do a couple different ways, like the water change mixing station behind us here, that one we mix it until it's clear with a recirculating pump. Starts at the bottom, draws back over the top. We mix that whole thing, we let it settle. The one in the warehouse that runs the 750 XXL and the ULM tanks in Ryan's office and all of those, that one we mix in a separate barrel, pump it from that once it's clear into the storage reservoir that draws those auto water changes, and then that stays and sits, doesn't recirculate and things
like that. Once it's mixed, we leave it alone.
Yeah.
And we don't keep mixing it. And I'll be interested. I mean, that is what I believe to be the right way. But it'll be really interesting to see once you do your tests on whether or not adding heat and mixing, what effect it has on there. But I'm pretty certain it's going to drop all the levels. When you did your test on storing salt water, did you seal the containers? Would the Red Sea, where'd it go? Would the Red Sea Coral Pro smell when you open the bucket? Mine smells when it's empty, not bad, or just Not odorless.
Not odorless.
I didn't pick any odor up, did you?
No, I didn't. So when the way I sealed these was we consider like loosely sealed. So I took some cellophane or some plastic wrap, stuck it on over the tank, and had to do like 2 sections of it. So there were some gaps and stuff in there. So it wasn't completely sealed. Probably about as airtight as like your Brew trash can with a lid on it, which isn't 100% airtight, but it's also pretty well sealed. But
it
no,
prevents evaporation.
Yeah, that's basically what it's for. But as far as the smell, no. What some people do notice in their RO storage is like a smell over time, or like a film that develops on the inside that some people tie with a smell, but not mixed salt water.
So I'm pretty certain the film that people see in their RO storage is many times related to chloramines and the ammonia that splits off, and the ammonia feeds bacteria. And so if you feel slime in there, it is almost certainly a bacterial coat that's grown in there, and you may want to test ammonia coming out of your RO system, and if not, if it is, you're going to probably use a more advanced solution for your RO system. There's a plethora of videos out in there, but if you're getting a smell coming out of your RO system, and note that if you go past the point in your DI resin, like it doesn't just stop working, it actually purges all of the stuff into the tank, and it doesn't do it in unison. Like all the bad stuff comes out together. It actually layers in its preference, the resin's preference for different contaminants. And the first one's ammonia, second one is phosphate, and third one is silica. So if you go past the DI stage or the consumption of your DI container, it's going to dump high levels of ammonia, then dump high levels of phosphate, then dump high levels of silica in your tank. So bad news all around, don't do that. But if you're noticing that from your RO water, that's high degree likelihood that it's ammonia, and you should do something a little bit better about how you manage the chloramines in your water, which is a big challenge.
Yeah. Does it make a difference if you test your specific gravity level while cold or tank temperature? So it should, but I would say that almost all of our instruments for the hobby are temperature they're temperature controlled, like they're auto-correcting.
So know what auto-correct means, and so I'm pretty certain auto-correct with a refractometer when you look through your eye means that there's a big heavy piece of metal in the end that maintains the temperature of the room, and when I put water on there, if I wait a couple of minutes, it will turn it to the temperature of the big heavy metal thing. But like, let's say that I stored the big heavy metal thing somewhere cold. It will not. Right, and so I think it's making some presumptions about the temperature in the room, because there's no I don't believe there's to be anything super accurate inside the thing that's changing. It's a pretty simple tool.
Right.
Whereas I believe the digital ones probably have a thermometer in the little disc or whatnot, or the room or whatever. So yes, it matters. Probably not a whole lot in application.
There you go.
Yep, ATC, but it works to the degree you understand it. So make sure to wait a little bit. I just want to thanks for choosing me to win in the salt giveaway. Oh, sweet. Jerry won some salt from us. There's 60 people that won the salt.
I sent out, so Adam took 30, I took 30, and I think I sent out 25 buckets this morning. Adam sent out 6. So
really?
You go check your Facebook messages, maybe because you're not a friend with Adam, but I had more friends who, my messages show up. But almost all the Tropic Marin Pro winners are out, and check your messages, because Adam might have a message in there for you for your Neomarine.
He's doing Brightwell. All right. Well, Brightwell, you're getting it slow. Adam's really really not keeping up his game. All right, we just got a few more questions here. It's Salt Day, man. I think we're just going to clear out the last ones here, because this has been such a hot topic, man. I think it's fun to talk about.
And I'm going to go back and post this video on the Reef to Reef thread for the Friday's video. I'll post the link in Friday's video in the description also, and then we'll take this one just to kind of add to the conversation. So
what's the difference between measuring salinity and specific gravity and PPT, and which one should you use? Use either one.
They all read it's what you understand. I think in most terms, probably specific gravity is the most commonly used one. 1.026 is a target. A lot of us use parts per thousand, so 35. But
I'd say whichever one is easier for you to read.
Yeah.
So like
35 is easy.
Yeah, whatever one, the line that's easiest for you to read in there, use that one.
Yeah.
And so they scale in the area we're looking for. They're scaling uniformly, so it doesn't matter.
Cool.
Lesson question was refilling saltwater bin with RO water and realized the heater had been on and it empty and it melted saltwater output pump tube. Fixed, but does all that water need to be dumped? Yes, it does. Well,
so he melted plastic inside of the reservoir, and then I guess there was probably some residual water left in there, so some kind of chemical reaction from melting the plastic that might still be in the water that was left over. Is that going to affect the water overall chemically?
I wouldn't find out.
It's best when in doubt, play safe and just get new water.
Depends on like how much you value your corals and your fish.
Yeah, I mean,
I don't know.
It's not worth finding out.
So I can tell you that just because here there was one bin that was heated here.
Oh yeah.
And one of the problems is we got to make sure that the water stays at any given time. We'll never let the heater not get submerged, right? Yeah. And so it had been pinned to the bottom for a really long time, and then at one point, here it is. At one point, the heater got pulled up a little bit, and so the water, when it got down to its lowest point, submerged this end, and you can't really see it, but it totally melted the end, and the cap melted off. Exposing
the wires. Which are copper wires.
Yep, copper wires, and Noah's tank absolutely filled with copper. The corals all showed it. We tested it. The copper's in there. It was almost instantaneous when he put the change water in there that everything started to slough and die. I've never seen tissue fall off a coral so fast. Bad. We were able, because we have so much salt water here, we were able to correct it. And, oddly enough, man, that was the first time we did a water change with Tropic Marin. And they're like, oh my gosh, man, this is the one that, I said, no coral, no salt would ever kill anything, right? This is the one. It's killing everything in there. One water change, all done. No, it was the copper from this thing. So, ugly situation. So that's another reason why I just don't heat. Yeah. I don't heat the water going in there at all, because I now that I see that, I'm super, super prone to not notice that heater got pulled off the bottom at some point in time. And it's not just bad for the fish and stuff, man. It's a fire hazard. Oh yeah, for sure. A 1,000-watt heater or whatever
on plastic.
Down there. Yeah, and plastic. Just bad news all around. All right, 3 left. All right. Have you ever considered developing your own salt? Yeah, and so I'm absolutely certain that if we created BRS salt, everybody would buy it. But I don't want to create something that isn't going to be, fit the BRS brand, which means it's more, better, and less, or at least 2 of those things. Yeah. And in this case, I think that we'd be making a brand, just to have our brand on it, which ain't good enough. Yeah. And there's other brands out there that, house brands that, have their own, salt. And it's well known that just somebody rebadged somebody else. That's of no value to me at all. So if we sold the salt, is because we decided that we were able to provide something better to the community than is already out there. And I think that there's a lot of people doing a pretty good job on that already. Salt already has pretty low pressure on price, so a lot of them are pretty affordable. It might not seem like this 50-pound bucket of salt is that cheap, but go buy 50 pounds of table salt. You'll find it ain't that much different, man. It's a lot of salt that's in there, and it's not just like some water softener, sodium chloride, man. It is mixed to a specific purpose with specific standards. So maybe someday, if you do see BRS salt someday, it will come with a very distinct reason as to why we think it will help people be more successful with their tanks. And the last one. All right.
How do you guys combat elevated alk and calcium levels in your tank trials? I don't know if we combat it, but we actually, so for example, we're running the elevated alkalinity and calcium test versus non-elevated elevated alkalinity and calcium. And when we first did it, we were doing, so we got this one from the elevated Red Sea Coral Pro levels versus the Blue Bucket levels. And we wanted to test to see, does one actually grow coral faster or better or what have you than the other one? So we purposefully, pegged each one at those levels. So combat it. I'd say we don't use a salt that is elevated to begin with. Like we use a salt that is a good baseline, and then build on it if we have to.
Yep.
And that's probably like the Pro is what we use, what we're using now for our tests.
Yeah. And the Tropic Marine Pro. So I will say though that out of that thing, man, is we definitely found that the corals grew faster with the elevated levels, and some of them even like had better coloration. Now, so one of the things, and we got another test going on in a real tank, so you can kind of see what an actual tank will look like at higher and lower. But that doesn't tell the whole story. So like I don't know any other parts of the story per se, but like it doesn't mean that the fish like an alkalinity of 12 necessarily.
True.
It doesn't mean that you're not riding the edge, and there might be some foreseen circumstances. Like it works great as long as everything else is great. So it's hard to say, but for sure we found that higher alkalinity levels in calcium, magnesium, like I think they grew almost 50% faster.
In the first results that we put out was just about 50%.
Yeah, so I'd go back and read or watch those videos if you're interested in that. I think there's like 2 or 3 of them on elevated elements is the search phrase you'd probably look for.
Yeah.
All right, so salt all wrapped up, except for no, because there's like 8 more of these things now that we talked about.
Got so many new tests coming up. So like Friday, like we mentioned, Friday, coming out with what do these things look like after 3 weeks of storage? Like what would your bin look like essentially? So we want to kind of give you a visual of what happens. Is like this week we didn't get to really see what the tanks look like, but there was comments like behind me. Somebody said, "Hey, I see white in the bottom of that tank, behind you. Like which one was that?" So we're going to talk about each tank and what kind of they looked like afterwards. Different variety of tests. Like we're gonna show you with a light. We got some poker chips in there. There's a color difference. Probably gonna run some through a sediment filter and see what that looks like. Difference in color of the buckets. All that whole stuff. So we'll come out with that.
One of them, to me, actually looks yellow now. So we might even like put it into a white bucket and give a variance. What they look like. So.
Yeah, and then we got so many more after. We just finished up the time-lapse videos of how fast they mix, clear, and then we're going into the temperature and circulation part of them. We've got the Triton results that we're waiting on for that also, so tons of them. And then we're doing calcium reactor stuff too in the background.
Wow, we're like booked out for a while. All right, awesome. Well, we'll see you next Wednesday, Friday, and Monday.
Yeah, for sure.
But live Monday. All right, see you then.
Take care, guys.